Well, at least I'm not pissed off after staying up all night to see a Zack Snyder film. Well, that was a movie. Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm giving my first thoughts on Army of the Dead, the new film by Zack Snyder that was released last night on Netflix. So I talked about before that I was really excited for this movie because it was going to be the first time that Zack Snyder was able to do what he wanted to do in a movie without studio interference. It had been on my most anticipated movies list for a little bit now. I was excited to see it. I was curious to see what we would get because looking at the plot synopsis, it didn't sound like the most highbrow movie, but maybe that would be a fun thing. So in case you don't know, the plot of this film follows a group of people led by Dave Bautista going into Las Vegas, which is on lockdown because there's a zombie apocalypse that's been isolated to just that one spot. Their motivation for going into the middle of a zombie-infested area is simple. Money. There's tons of money that's just sitting right there in Vegas that nobody can get to because of the zombies. But the zombies actually aren't their only problem. The US government is about to drop a nuclear warhead on the area to rid of zombies once and for all. So they have to get in, get the money, and get out fast. So first of all, the name of this movie. Army of the Dead is such a vague zombie movie name. Like all of them. Like Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead. None of them evoke much of a plot other than there's zombies in this. Army of the Dead, same thing. It just evokes that there's a lot of zombies. And I didn't think that the title even really fit. Like, the whole point of this movie was that it was a different spin on it. It's like, you're taking a zombie apocalypse movie, but you're adding in a heist element. Why wouldn't you call it something that evokes that? Like Viva La Zombie or something. Maybe come up with something better than that. That's just the first thing that came to my head. Army of the Dead doesn't really quite make sense for me because there is no Army of the Dead. You've got this civilization of the dead, if anything, because you've got these elite zombies that are alphas, that are smart, fast, strong, and they're in charge of all of the shamblers under them that are just your run-of-the-mill walkers, zombies. This seemed more like a government of the dead or a hierarchy of the dead. Now, obviously, none of those are good titles either, but Army of the Dead, maybe that should have been the sequel, because at one point they talk about trying to weaponize zombies, making their own army of zombies. And, I mean, that's not in this movie. That doesn't happen in this movie. They just mention it. So I don't see how Army of the Dead was a good title for this. Maybe the sequel, but not this. And it's it's a goofy movie. It really is a goofy movie. It's a zombie movie that's not trying to be anything other than a zombie movie. I don't mean that it's not trying anything new. There's some new interesting things in this movie. I'll get into most of that in the spoilers, but some of it is right there in the trailers where there's a zombie tiger. There's some zombie animals that we've seen in some movies before, like we had the zombie dogs in Resident Evil, and I think there was some zombie animals in some other movies, but we get to see new, different versions of these things that are interesting. My meaning is that it's not trying to be highbrow. It knows what it is. Zack Snyder can get much more highbrow than he did in this movie. I know that he does have a ceiling to how highbrow he does get, but this definitely isn't anywhere near that. This is trying to be a fun, gross, gory zombie movie, and it succeeds at that. It really is very violent, which can be a lot of fun if that's what you're looking for, because it doesn't hold back. It's gory and it's gross, and it succeeds at fulfilling all of the tropes that you would want in a zombie movie. To me, this felt like an homage to zombie movies, like it was trying to fulfill every trope and play everything by the book, yet still make something entertaining out of it. And I think that's what Snyder was doing. Like I said, I know Snyder can make movies more highbrow than this, but he didn't because that's not what the genre called for. He wasn't trying to make anything that would make you think a little bit more about life. He was trying to make a movie about zombies killing people and do it in an entertaining way, and he succeeded at that. To me, that was both satisfying and frustrating as a Zack Snyder fan, because, like I said, this is the first time that we're getting to see Zack Snyder uninhibited by a studio. We did have the Justice League re-edit that we got earlier this year, but even that was still not exactly what a lot of people wanted from it, including myself. I didn't really enjoy that. This was the first movie that he had made that was going to be uninhibited disconnected from any studio. It was just going to be him independently making something and then putting it on Netflix. So that gave him free reign to do whatever he wanted. So you're thinking he could do something big and spectacular. He'd been talking about adapting Atlas Shrugged, I think, one of Ayn Rand's things. And he was talking about doing stuff like that, which could be big and exciting, could be really interesting. But he went in a very different route of doing something really B-movie-ish, which is still fun and fantastic and something that he wouldn't have been able to as easily accomplish or do if attached to his studio. But at the same time, if you're going into it expecting Zack Snyder Unleashed, you're only getting one aspect of that. You're getting Zack Snyder honestly making a film. It's not him trying to prove anybody wrong. It's not him trying to reinvent the wheel. It's just him making a movie free of thinking about any inhibition from a studio, just making something for the fun of it. And so if you have your expectations set at that, I think you'll have a lot more fun. Don't expect this to be his magnum opus, because it's not. Just expect it to be a Zack Snyder film the way he wants it to be, and you'll have fun with it. I mean, that being said, it's not a perfect movie. I think every criticism I can have for this movie falls under the kind of blanket coverage of the fact that it's trying to be a tropey zombie movie. It's like when Quentin Tarantino for a little bit was just paying homage to other genres and making weird, strange movies that weren't as popular. This falls under that, to me, with Zack Snyder, where he's paying homage to a genre that he loves, of cheesy zombie movies. So, therefore, what you get out of it is a cheesy zombie movie. It can still be entertaining, but you're also going to have all the cheese that you'd expect from a B zombie movie in here. Like explosions not reacting like how they should at all. You know, somebody shoots a gas can and explodes. Like, stuff that doesn't make sense. Plot twists happening just for the sake of plot twists happening. The plot making absolutely no sense. Even just the basic premise of this, where you've got this guy hiring a group of people to go rob his own safe that's in Vegas. And so they have to hire like a safe cracker. And it's like, if this is his safe, couldn't he just tell them the combination? Why do they need to break in? And there's a lot more things that I'll get into in spoilers, but the plot doesn't make sense at all. And on top of the plot just being goofy and bad, so is all of the acting. I mean, Dave Bautista is the big name actor in this movie, and so he is actually probably the best actor in this movie, which is not good. I will say though, about like an hour and a half into this movie, I remembered all of a sudden Chris D'Elia was going to be in this movie and was recast. They had to do some reshoots and edit around him. And now that I think about it, watching the movie, I wouldn't have noticed if I didn't know that. It was done really well, actually. So if you were worried about reshoots or anything like that, it's not really noticeable, because actually the character that he was supposed to play is on his own for most of his role. He's the helicopter operator, if you're watching the movie, which was replaced by a different actress, and you don't really notice. If I didn't already know it, I probably wouldn't have noticed it. I actually had to Google which character was he originally, because it's not really obvious. I will say that there's some things in this movie that it seemed like there was a lot of great ideas, like really cool, badass zombie apocalypse related ideas that were unfortunately underutilized. Like, you've got this breed of zombies in this. You've got multiple breeds of zombies in this movie, which is the new norm, apparently. Every zombie movie, there's more than one type. Even The Walking Dead, there were supposed to be walkers and then also, like, runners and sitters and stuff like that. But it ended up just being walkers. But every time we get a new zombie movie, there's multiple kinds. There's a kind that are shamblers in this, and then there's the alphas, which can run and jump and are really strong. At the beginning of the movie, we see how the zombie apocalypse starts in Vegas, and then the US military comes and they drop these shipping containers to create a wall around Vegas. And they're just dropping shipping containers in a row, like 3 high. These alphas are intelligent, they're strong, and they're fast. How could they not just climb over and leave if they wanted to? They do mention that they don't want to leave. I don't know why they wouldn't, though. I guess they view it as their home and their own little kingdom, and they're not being bothered there. But you'd think if they're intelligent that they would try to leave, knowing that there's a bunch of food right there on the other side of the fence. At least they would jump over, grab somebody every once in a while, and then jump back. I don't know. Maybe there's a steady enough of a flow of people coming in trying to steal stuff that they just can take them and eat them and they're not worried about it. But you would think that this would be more of a problem. They act like, oh, we just dropped the shipping containers, it's not an issue anymore. You can't think about this movie, because if you think about it, it doesn't make sense. From a filmmaking standpoint, too, I think there's some things that, like, you could have edited differently. This movie's over 2 hours, and it really doesn't deserve that to me. I know Snyder likes his long movies, he likes his slow-mo, he likes all that stuff. Although, shockingly, there wasn't that much slow-mo in this, if at least as far as Snyder is concerned. There really wasn't. So, I actually saw a review posted, just the headline. I didn't actually read the review because I don't like to read reviews before I watch movies, where somebody was complaining about slow-mo. The person had obviously not watched this movie yet, because there wasn't really. I only remember like 1 or 2 moments of slow-mo in the whole movie. It's not really that big of a deal in this. My thing is, like, I know that Snyder was being uninhibited, and that's a great thing. He got to make the movie he wanted. But there was definitely moments in this that I was thinking while watching it, like, if a studio was involved, they would have cut this, and I wouldn't have minded. They would have said, this is weird, get rid of it. And it would have been probably for the best. That being said, as an overall product, it was enjoyable. I'm not saying it was a great movie. It probably won't make my top 10 of this year list or anything, but, like, hey, it was a 6, maybe a 6.5 if you're really into this kind of movie. It's goofy, it's gory, but the violence is fun, and the acting and plot are serviceable enough that you don't really have to think about it and can just watch it happen. I will say, they try to make some of the characters interesting and try to get you invested in them, which isn't always the case in zombie movies. Sometimes people are just food for zombies, and that's fine. And this movie, if they had gone for that, it would have been fine. But unfortunately, they tried to make some of the characters interesting and tried to make them worth investing in, and they're really not in the end. Whether it's bad writing or bad acting or a combination, they're just not interesting. That is probably the biggest flaw. If you were trying to make a goofy, over-the-top zombie movie, I felt like parts of it tried a little too hard. Just a little too hard to be an actually good movie, and you probably should have just leaned a little bit more into the goofy and the stupid. Not a lot, like I said. This pretty much hits the nail on the head with being stupid and goofy and fun. Snyder obviously had fun making this. He obviously was paying homage to, like, the greats. I know he's a big Romero fan, and I'm sure Romero would be proud of this movie. So that's what I had to think. Spoiler free. I'm going to get into spoilers now. Kind of nitpick it a little bit more, get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty with it. So if you don't care about spoilers, you don't mind it being spoiled, then stick around. But if you don't want anything spoiled, then go ahead, check it out first on Netflix, come back and we'll talk about it then. So thanks, bye. Alright, so spoilers. Yeah, there's just a lot of silly things that happen in this, like, action-wise and stuff. I mean, obviously, there's the classic situation where it's like, David Bautista and the head zombie are fighting, and he drops a gun, and his daughter's right there, and so she wants to help, and instead of grabbing the gun that's right there, she grabs the fire extinguisher and smashes him over the head. And it's like, well, you could have grabbed the gun and shot him in the head. That probably would have worked a lot better. I mean, that's how they end up killing him anyway, but whatever. There's tons of, like, plot points in this movie that were obviously just put in there just for the sake of being put in there. Like, they didn't actually make any sense at all. The nuclear bomb is supposed to be going off on the 4th of July at dusk because the president, I guess, is supposed to be like a Donald Trump impression or caricature, and it's kind of hilarious. There's this moment where, for some reason, it's deemed that the 4th of July, having a nuke go off on the 4th of July, is unpatriotic or unconstitutional or something, so they convince him to change the date. And on the news, you have a reporter quoting him as saying, it would have been really cool. It was the ultimate fireworks show, and really patriotic if you think about it. And it's just like... that was really funny, and I kind of agree. Like, having a nuke go off on 4th of July is a hilarious idea. I really thought they were going to do something more with that because they hinted at it, and then they didn't really do much with it at all. Which is kind of the theme of this movie, is having good ideas and then not doing much with it. They hint at this whole thing where these zombies are smarter and more intelligent and are capable of doing things and running a civilization of sorts, almost kind of like the zombies in, like, I Am Legend or something, and then they don't really do much smart. Although I will say, the leader has, like, a metal mask he wears so that he can't get shot, at least in the front of his head, and that was cool. And then you've got this zombie tiger, which is cool, but once again, he kills one person, and that's, like, it. You see him walking around and prowling around, and it's cool, but he only ever kills one person. So there was a lot of really cool ideas, I just wish there was a better execution of these ideas. Like, it's really cool he's wearing this mask, and so he's confronting these two good guys who are trying to shoot him in the head, and it keeps bouncing off, and you can't shoot him anywhere else because he's a zombie and he won't die. But then they throw down the gun and they start wrestling him, and to match him, I guess he takes it off for, like, you know, to have a fighter's honor or something. But the other guy's standing right there. He has a gun. They're wrestling. The human's obviously losing. Shoot him in the head. Like, why wouldn't you just shoot him in the head? That doesn't make any sense. Why have honor when fighting a zombie? Just kill the zombie. And there's this whole other plot point where there's the head zombie, and then there's this zombie queen, and then they kill her, but she's pregnant. So you have this whole cool idea of, like, these zombies, at least this alpha, can reproduce still. What does that lead to? There's this whole other world of ideas that you could get into that they don't get into, because she dies and then they pull out the zombie, and the zombie baby, I guess, is dead. It really piqued my interest, but then didn't do anything with it. So I felt like a lot of this movie was a bit of a tease that way, because there was a lot of really good ideas. And sometimes the execution was cool. Like, the whole mask on the guy was a cool idea. He also wore a cape for some reason. Not entirely sure why, but, like, that feeds into the same thing of this being like an over-the-top cheesy zombie movie. It's doing cool things for the sake of doing cool things, not really asking why, just doing it because it's cool and fun and gross and gory and all of that. There's a lot of things that are done plot-wise, too, that are just there to be dramatic. Like, at the end, they're trying to get off the top of the building and the helicopter's not there anymore, but then it's right next to the building. So it's just like, oh, where did it go? Oh, it's right there. So you just wasted time. Oh, by the way, speaking of time, going back to the thing, so instead of the nuke being delayed, like what happened when politics are involved in things, they actually move it up a day. So their whole point was they were supposed to have all of the third and then part of the fourth to get in, get the money, get out. But now the nuke is actually coming at the end of the third, so like at dusk on the third. So that's right when they're in the middle of everything. Doesn't make sense, but that's the new plot. So now they, from that announcement, have 90 minutes, because they announced 90 minutes before they're going to drop a nuke that they're dropping a nuke, which, you know, once again, that doesn't make any sense. So even if they dropped everything, got into the helicopter, and flew away as fast as they could right then, a nuke has a blast radius of at least 100 miles and travels about the speed of light. At least parts of it do, I know. I did look it up. It's like it travels like 5 times the speed of sound. 5 times the speed of sound in a 100-mile radius. So if they're in the helicopter flying 100 miles per hour, they have an hour to get out of that. They have 90 minutes, so give them 15 minutes to get there, another 15 minutes for them to get the helicopter going because it was old and they couldn't quite get it going. All right, 90 minutes, enough time to get out. They don't leave right away. They haven't even opened the safe yet. It takes them another half hour to get the safe open after that, and then they end up leaving to go pick up somebody else that's in a different building with 9 minutes left. You're dead. You've been dead. Like, it's impossible at this point to get away. And so, as they're flying away, they pass the nuke going the other way, which hits and then explodes and knocks the helicopter out of the air. And the girl, the main character girl, has the nerve to be hit by the nuke, crash in a helicopter, and get up and go, huh, and walk away. Of course. Great. Alright, of course. So if you had any bets on who was going to live or die based on the trailer or anything, and you haven't seen it yet, the only one that does end up surviving is the daughter, which, in retrospect, knowing Zack Snyder made this movie and everything that happened with him, it had to be therapeutic for him. I don't want to make this video depressing all of a sudden, but I think that is a big part of why he wrote the plot the way he did, was to make a sacrificial movie where a father sacrifices for his daughter and then she lives and he dies. And so it's a very sad movie in that way. And it's very out of place because the movie is so goofy and it tries to make that moment really sad, which it is sad. But as he's dying, Dave Bautista, who's the father, as he's dying, he turns into a zombie and he starts growling, and it's like Dave Bautista's a horrible actor, and he's growling and it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen, and she's crying and has to kill him again, and it's like it's rough. It's hard to watch because you're like, I know this is supposed to be emotional, I know this is supposed to be sad, but I'm kind of laughing here. It's a mixed bag in that way, which is why I can't say it's the most fun zombie movie I've ever seen, even among the genre of the cheesy zombie movies. There's obviously more highbrow zombie movies and TV shows, like the first few seasons of The Walking Dead are pretty much peak zombie television to me. I love the first few seasons of The Walking Dead. It's really intelligent writing, it's interesting characters, good plot development. This doesn't have any of those. This isn't trying to do that. This is trying to do the Resident Evil shtick or fill in the blank shtick. It's just another one of those movies. But even so, Resident Evil kind of makes more sense and is more interesting, and then as that series progresses, gets more and more funny beyond how funny this is. It's also got better acting too, honestly. Like I said, Dave Bautista, best actor in this movie. So anyway, they do end up nuking Vegas. All the zombies are supposedly dead. The only survivor is the girl, except the safecracker actually locks the guy who was wrestling the zombie that I talked about earlier. He locks him back into the safe so that he survives the nuclear bomb, a la Indiana Jones. And then he somehow, after the fact, gets out, which I guess it's possible that there's like a relief lever, like an escape lever inside the safe, so that if you're trapped and you can press a button and it automatically opens. But that's not, I don't think that's normal for safes. But anyway, all of that, he survives, he gets out, but then plot twist at the end, he's been bitten by a zombie, and sequel? Like, that's the whole ending, is like, maybe sequel, there's still zombies, they still exist, ooh. And so that's kind of the cheesy ending. It kind of brings it back from that emotional scene with the dad and the daughter to, more zombies? I don't think that there will be a sequel. I really doubt there will, at least made by Zack Snyder. I doubt he cares enough to pursue that, and I'm fine with that. If there's no sequel to that, I'm fine with it. It's not, like I said, the best zombie movie I've ever seen. It doesn't really need a sequel. I liked how it ended. It leaves it open-ended for a sequel, but it also kind of just leaves it open-ended as maybe it's not a happy ending after all. So another really stupid, pointless plot twist is the guy who got them all to go break into his own safe, that I was complaining about that not making any sense. The real reason he was actually sending them in was to weaponize zombies. He was trying to get blood from the zombie queen, specifically. I don't know why the zombie queen. Maybe it was just from an alpha in general, but they do end up going after the zombie queen. This one guy who's on the inside and knows these details, he ends up decapitating the zombie queen, putting her head in a bag and carrying it around. Kind of like Jurassic Park 3, where they steal the egg and then they get in trouble because of that. Kind of reminded me of that. Wasn't exactly that, but still kind of felt like it borrowed from that a little bit. So they're not actually there to get the money. He lied to them to tell them about the money so that they go in, but really they just needed the zombie queen's blood or whatever. Now, the problem with that point is that the zombie queen is like the first person that they run into when they get inside. Like, you meet her within 5 minutes. The safe is all the way over there. You have to deal with all kinds of zombies. There's all kinds of shit that's going down. If you had just walked in with a group of like a SWAT team level, like arms people, like people that have fighting skills and know how to deal with zombies, they could have gone in, got out in 5 minutes, and they could have done that months ago. We find out while they're in there that there's another group that has the blueprints. He's tried this multiple times. This should have been a really easy thing to do. If you're not actually worried about the money, maybe I guess he was worried about that too and this was just a side mission, but if the most important thing to you was getting the zombie, that would have been really easy. She's literally the first person you meet, her and her little bodyguard, and they got rid of them pretty easily in the end. It took one guy to kill both of them, or I guess two people to kill both of them. That's not hard. That's really not complicated. Why are you wasting all this time going after the money that apparently you don't care about that much? It is a lot of money, but you're willing to give more than half of it away to these people getting it anyway, so what's the point? He wants to get the zombie, by the way, so that he can create his own army and weaponize zombies, which is why, like I said, Army of the Dead would have been a good sequel name if you went that direction for the sequel, but as far as this goes, there is no army. It's a civilization, which, once again, is a cool thing that they hinted at. There's an obvious hierarchy with these zombies because of the alphas and the betas, the shamblers, but they don't really explain it much. The zombies don't actually talk. They communicate with one another by screeching, but we don't actually get to hear their thought process about anything. They're obviously sad when their child and wife are killed, but that's all we really get to know about them. A lot of cool ideas hinted at, a lot of interesting ideas, just not a fulfilling conclusion to any of it, not a fulfillment of any of those ideas. In the end, it is a fun, stupid, emphasis on stupid, zombie B-movie. So if that's what you wanted, a Zack Snyder gore fest with zombies, that's what you get. You get all of that. And it is entertaining as that. You need to have your expectations set right. Like I said, don't go into this expecting a magnum opus. This isn't Snyder's swan song. This isn't his revival. This isn't any of that. This is him making a run-of-the-mill Snyder film. It's not his best. It's not his worst. It is another Snyder film. So if you like Snyder films, you'll enjoy this because it is a Snyder film. It is Snyder's personality showcased in a fun, goofy way. It's not hindered by studios. It doesn't have producers' fingerprints all over it or anything like that. But it's also not, 300 or, in my case, I Love Sucker Punch. It wasn't as good as either of those. It's just it's just a zombie movie, a goofy, stupid zombie movie. So I did enjoy it. I really did. I don't want to misconstrue that and say like, oh, I hated it. I enjoyed it for what it was. It succeeded at being what it was, but what it was trying to be wasn't anything highbrow or that unique or special. Just fun. And it was. So that's what I did think. Please let me know in the comments below what you guys thought. Also, don't forget to like, share, and if you're new here, subscribe. Thanks, guys. Bye.